Yeah.
Hi.
Sorry, I forgot to. Hi, I'm Nadia.
Hi, I'm Aaleia.
Hi, I'm Nameera.
And this is Operation Tomatometer.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Operation Tomatometer, where we are once again in the Clave. This is the Classics official film review podcast, and here on Operation Tomatometer, we share our commentary on the latest films and TV shows and more.
But before we get into this week's film, we want to remind you to stop, drop, and rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts and give it 5 stars. We're really close to our goal of 200, so please go and rate it.
Alright, so if you haven't been living in an uncharted island in the Philippines, then you'll know about the newest film, Uncharted.
Based on the PlayStation video game, Uncharted stars our favorite actor, Tom Holland.
Yes.
The film follows treasure hunters Victor Sullivan, or Sully, and Nathan Drake, who search for a 500-year-old lost fortune by the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan. They must solve one of the world's oldest mysteries and possibly find Nate's long-lost brother.
Now let's get into our favorite segment, Rotten or Not, where we try to put our heads together and figure out what the people at Rotten Tomatoes have rated this film. So first off, starting with the critic score. I just realized I didn't think of a critic score.
Off the top of your head, what do you think they gave it?
Okay, off the top of my head, because I didn't think about this in advance. Just saying it. Okay, when I watched it last night, I really enjoyed it, but thinking about what the critics, if they enjoyed it, I would say low. Okay, I'm scared.
I'm
scared of
go for it.
overgoing.
I also have a lowish score in mind.
70s? Like maybe 75? I'll say that. I'm like scared, because I always like overestimate.
I think I'm going to go lower than you, and I'm going to
Okay.
say the critics might have given this movie just a 70.
Okay.
I feel like it wasn't a very critical movie. It's more of like one of those feel-good audience movies
Yeah.
with all the action sequences, and that it does have that fan servicing based on the actual video game. So yeah, I think a cool 70.
So I'm actually going to go a little lower than that. I'm not so sure that critics would have been so into this whole idea, even though I personally think it was very well done. I'm going to say critics gave it like a 60, maybe.
Okay.
So now will our lovely producer give
I'm
us the
scared.
critic score?
40?
Whoa!
Oh,
Wow.
wait a minute.
Wow.
Wait, the last time it was this low was Eternals. Yeah.
Okay, that is very surprising.
That kind of hurts my heart a little bit. I enjoyed the film, so
I'm not
that's
surprised.
wrong.
What is
honestly.
the audience score going to be then? Because
I mean, I knew it wasn't gonna be ranting and raving about how much they loved it, but I didn't know the critics were gonna be so mean.
it's a rotten score, isn't it?
That's very rotten.
40 is a bit low. I think
That's
maybe around a 50 I was
ridiculous.
giving
Yeah.
it.
Critics are a little harsh. I'm just saying. But what do we think now about the audience?
I think audience is going to be definitely higher than that.
Yeah.
I think actually much higher, because I don't think that
Much.
the audience would have even thought about some of the things that the critics were thinking about. They would have just been like, it's a fun movie, and it was really well done, and it was well written also. I liked the comedy in it.
Yeah.
And it didn't have that old cliche feel. It was more modern cliche. So I'm going to say 80?
Yeah.
Maybe that's too high as compared to the critics score, but that sounds
Okay,
about right.
doubling up.
I would go similar to you. I was thinking 83, 84. But yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a very large gap between the two. Just about your point about the dialogue, that stuck out to me as well. I also really enjoy the acting. Well, Tom Holland, I think he's great, so
Yeah.
we could get more into that, but I also really enjoyed the writing, surprisingly.
I think I'm going to have to go a little bit lower.
Oh,
I'm going to
okay.
go with around a 74, 75. Not
Interesting.
greatly different from my
Yeah.
critic score. Only because there were some points of the movie where I was just what's going on? The child acting at the beginning was horrendous in my opinion, and that just really put a bad tone in my mind. I was some of the actual visual effects were also really cool
Yeah.
to see on screen. But I think it's around a 74, 75 realm. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, but we can agree that it definitely is higher than 40.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
So now, will our lovely producer show us the audience score? Okay, I'm excited now for this one. I'm a little nervous. Ooh!
Wow.
I had a feeling, I was gonna say it might surprise us all and be in the 90s.
That is.
But that makes me happy. So we have a 40 and we have a 90. Both exact 50-point difference.
This is really surprising.
It's very surprising. I don't know if we've ever had a gap this large before, so
think
this
so.
is definitely good on you, Uncharted, for achieving this.
I have to go read the critics' reviews now and see
Yeah.
exactly what they didn't like about it. I thought it was going to be much higher.
Yeah, it's like you said, there were some moments that were a little, I don't know what the word is, but definitely kind of like
Meh.
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 Yeah.
No.
But overall, I thought it was a very balanced film. I liked the plot. For an action film, I think it was sectioned off pretty well.
Yes.
You know, with the robbery of the key and then using the keys to get the map. And then, which I was really excited, by the way. I was like, it can't be over. And then it wasn't. But then we go to the Philippines and we actually find the ships. So I thought it progressed really well and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun.
What do we think about how the characters were portrayed? Because this is based on a video game. So were the characters well developed? How were women portrayed? Because that was one thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go. You go.
No, I kind of like, I personally wrote down like, oh, like the female characters, like the love interest, she was very like underdeveloped. She was first viewed as an antagonist and then she was very untrusted and whatnot.
Yeah.
And she was just kind of like a plot device used to serve how they're gonna get the other key in the story.
Yeah.
I wish that she was a little more fleshed out, but I think at heart this is a story about the two men.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's kind of probably why. Do I agree with that? No, personally. But I think it's also like that new dynamic kind of focusing on that like almost paternal relationship in a way. Because our main character Nathan Drake doesn't have like a father figure or even a brother figure.
Yeah,
It's kind of
exactly.
like Sully grows to be that for him.
I agree. I do enjoy films that explore like different types of love, like brotherly love, fatherly love, or just like between two figures that become like brothers. So I did enjoy that, but I agree. What's her name? Chloe being used as just a plot device, and it was kind of jarring because they drop a little bit of her background, her backstory, where she says her father once gave away her first treasure, and you see some like hints at what like her history was like, and then they don't really explore that later. She just becomes this flip-flopper,
Yeah.
which it is interesting to like build up for the audience this relationship between her and what's his name? Nate.
Yeah.
And so it is like a fun plot twist. I did enjoy that, but then they become like friends again, and then again she betrays him, and then he betrays her back, and it was just a lot of like, okay, well, is she good, is she bad? And at the end, you know, she doesn't really reunite with them. They just kind of like laugh at her on her boat. They're like, look at her, she's just on her but you know, so I'm saying it just kind of kept going back and forth.
Maybe that was sort of the point also, to make it like this isn't a character who we can clearly define as
Yeah.
being good or bad, and it's just someone who is just thinking of her own interests, and she's not necessarily a bad person, she's just like
Yeah.
everyone else. And I found that interesting that there was never really anyone who came up to Nate and was like, thou shalt not steal, right? It was just he's a thief. In the beginning we think he's this nice, handsome guy, and then he starts stealing stuff, and then he's like, I want the bracelet, even though it wasn't really his, and he stole it from some poor girl at the bar. So,
Hey, yo, not poor girl. She was quite well off.
She was quite rich.
but yeah, it never actually said that like stealing is bad. So that wasn't really their point, was to do any of that. It was just say this is fun, and people who do bad things aren't necessarily always bad people, whether or not you agree with that. But it's just a fun movie, like Indiana Jones or something.
Yes.
Adventurous.
Which they did mention at some point, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Indiana
They
Jones.
reference that.
I really like these types of movies. They are really fun. And it did kind of give me the feeling of an Indiana Jones film. I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't like, oh, it tried to be an Indiana Jones film and it failed. I thought it kind of succeeded in doing, like, giving me the same rush with the plane scene and then just the whole, like, finding the treasure. I thought it was really well done.
Even the production value, you could tell.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that I would expect from Marvel or something. Just like how incredible all the effects were and the visuals and everything, especially that opening sequence where he's hanging out of
Yes.
the plane with the boxes and everything. And one thing that I also found interesting was it focused a lot on the juxtaposition between those very modernized scenes with like Papa John's and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the underground caverns of the sacred past,
Yeah.
and the present is sort of encroaching upon that. What was once so holy and sacred is now turning to a Papa John's.
No, I feel like it was really funny to see like how like they just broke into the church. I think that was something that just gave me like internal humor. Like, damn, they really just got in. But definitely that Papa John scene and like just the way that like Sully kind of threw the main antagonist into the wall. That was funny for me.
That made me laugh. He just flung her like a dog.
Flung her like a bug. I was like, wow, okay, getting there. But speaking of that, like in like the Spain scenes, right? I really enjoyed actually the fight at the nightclub.
Yes.
I feel like it was very, very like the camera movement was very, very specific and precise, and I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And speaking of the nightclub, that is a direct juxtaposition, like you said, with the modern, immediately going in these like church hallways that you think are really deserted, and then you see all this like tubing and whatever, and you're like, this looks really modern. And then you see these strobe lights, and you're like, this is not ancient.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so funny.
And stuff, and there's like EDM playing in the background.
That was hilarious, but that was also really fun to watch. So they did a really good job of balancing that out. And speaking on the plane scene, which you mentioned earlier, that was I think that was my favorite, if not one of my most favorite scenes, because I think the cinematography was really cool in the sense that it felt like you were in the moment, and I think there were some like POV shots from Nate, and it just felt like you were tumbling with him. And I think the effect of it, which really works well, is that it feels like a video game in the sense. Sometimes it looked like Nate actually... I felt like I was watching a video game cutscene at moments. And I think it also worked well, like, when he jumps on a crate, and then you, as the audience, will hear Chloe saying, like, come on, Nate. But she's not in frame, so it kind of feels more so like a cutscene where you have to, like, maybe press a button to, like, grab her hand or something. So I thought it was, like... I think it's interesting when these video game adapted movies come out, and then you see how well they kind of keep the essence of the video game. And I think Uncharted also did that really well.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because I don't actually remember anything specific about the camera movements, and now that you're mentioning it, I'm like trying to remember exactly what it was because it really felt like you were right there. When you are doing stuff, right, in your daily life, you don't think, where am I looking, or the direction. You're just thinking that this is me and here's where I am. Yeah. This is what I see. And that's sort of what that scene was in the film. And that's incredible that they were able to do that.
So yeah, another thing that I thought was really well done was Tom Holland's bar skills.
Yes.
I feel like that was just so pleasant to watch. I didn't know he could do all of that. And if you have to learn that from the movie, that was like very well done.
That was
I feel
really
like
cool.
Look, another thing, the casting of this movie was also really spot on.
Yes.
I was pleasantly like surprised with Tom Holland and even Rudy Pankow as like the brother. That was the first thing for me. I was like, oh my god, I know him, Outer Banks. And it's kind of like good to see like new faces and like that the industry is going forward with these new people.
It was really cool to see Tom Holland in this sort of role because we're used to seeing him as like Spider-Man, a hero, and they played with that in the beginning of the film, right? They opened and he was like this nice guy like chatting up all these people, and then we realized that he's a thief. So it was really interesting to see that, and he did a really great job in the film as well, especially with like formulating that theme of faith, right?
Yeah, trust was a huge theme in this film, and going back to Tom Holland's acting, I think he's a great actor in all the films he does, but yeah, it was really cool to see him in this role, and he really rose up to the challenge. In one particular scene where he finds out that Sully was somehow intertangled with his brother's murder, that scene was really heavy and intense, and Tom Holland brought it, and you could see the tears in his eyes and how heavy it was. And I think the dialogue in that scene also was really, like, heart-punching.
Also, like, the entire kind of, like, creeping upon the ship and the wreckage was also very well done. Obviously, through, like, the teasers and trailers, we saw, like, the entire portion of where they lift up the ships, and we see that kind of, like, fight scene. That was cool.
That was really cool.
That was Pirates of the Caribbean in the
Yes,
sky.
I thought about that.
And I was like, wow, they're really going for it. And the cannonball scene, I like
that
that
was
a
so
lot.
cool.
That was really good.
It really brought out a lot of feelings. Indiana Jones brought those feelings back. It brought back the Jack Sparrow vibes. And so I really enjoyed that. And they spun it on their own to have it in the sky. But I'd have to say, it was so hard to watch those ships be destroyed. See all that history just go down the drain. I was like, oh god. But it is an action movie, so everything gets destroyed as per usual.
Especially as teenagers, one of the things that really stuck out to me walking out of the theater...
Violence.
Violence, yes. But also the spirit of exploration, and I think as young people that's something that's really important to us, is having that freedom to do what we want, and also to discover new things, right? Like that's why these movies are so powerful to people, and people love watching these things. Because we want to be the ones to discover new places and ancient mysteries, right? And that's something that I also really loved, is the theme of something being gone versus being lost. And we hear Sam's voice in the back of his head a lot, always saying that. And I really like that they were able to incorporate that into the film as both something about grief and grieving like the loss of a loved one, but also discovering new things.
Absolutely. Do we have any final comments on the film?
It didn't deserve that critic score.
I think we agree on that. Absolutely.
Also, I know that it's not like, I believe the video game is called Uncharted, but Uncharted is such a good name. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
that is a
very
really good
fitting.
name. I think that's a wrap for this week's episode. A quick reminder to rate Operation Tomatometer on Apple Podcasts and to check out the Classics Instagram and TikTok page at THHS Classic to see our bloopers, behind the scenes, and other cool projects that we're working on.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Bye.